think it's about time we heard from some of our viewers.
Okay.
So I have a phenomenal email.
A phenomenal email.
From Peg Wolf, who says, "Dear sir, for the love of God, please find a new synonym for phenomenal. Sounding like Tyler Florence is not a good thing." So anyway, we have someone else who's responded. This is Donna Shore, not Donna Shore. "After preparing a elaborate dish, instead of salivating and telling the viewing audience how divine the result is, how about saying, yuck, that's awful?
What?
Even if you have to do it on April 1st. I think they just want to change the pace.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. TV show where the food tastes
Well,
awful.
a lot of people have told us that when they see us eating, that's their favorite moment because they can really read into our reactions.
Well, it just happens that the food is all excellent.
It's all phenomenal.
That's right. That's right, it is. Speaking of phenomenal food, let's get to chicken and slicks. Now, have you heard of chicken and slicks?
Yeah, I have to say, until recently, I'd never heard of it. I'm not from the South, and slicks is not a northern thing.
That's right. You're more of a biscuit kind of dumpling guy, right? Well, I grew up, and dumplings were fat noodles that you simmered in the broth with lots of chicken. So good. And they're basically held together with fat and flour, maybe a little bit of liquid. So they're super tender, and I'm going to make you a fan of a Southern-style dumpling, all right? Let's get to the chicken first, and we've got to deal with today's supermarket chickens, which don't taste like much. So we want to get as much flavor out of them as we can. It's 1.5 pounds each of bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs and bone-in, skin-on chicken breast. We've cut the chicken breast in half. We're going to pat them dry with some paper towels, season them with some salt and pepper. Just flip them over. All right, so that looks good. Now this is 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. I'm going to put it in my Dutch oven right here and turn the heat to medium. And now I'm just going to stir this and let this flour toast, and that's going to take about 5 minutes. Now we're going to use this toasted flour later on in the recipe.
But I'm not going to tell you why now.
That's right, I'm going to keep it a secret.
Right.
So we are done with the toasting here. Our mystery ingredient. If you could scrape all of that flour into the bowl, that would be great.
You mean some of it in the bowl?
Sure. Now, I'm going to put in a tablespoon of vegetable oil and crank up the heat to medium-high. We want to heat this oil until it just begins to smoke, and that's going to help us get a really good sear on the outside of the chicken, but also prevent it from sticking. Just going to start it skin side down. A nice sear there. Just pile them all in there. So about 10 minutes, turn it a few times until they're browned all over. All right, Chris, the chicken looks beautifully browned all over, so time to take them out of the pot. There's tons of fat in here. I'm not going to throw it out, don't worry, but I am going to pour it off because we're going to use that later on too. Should be about 2 tablespoons in there. If not, we're going to augment it with just a little bit more vegetable oil. Got a tablespoon of vegetable oil, and we'll start sauteing some onions as well. This is just 1 onion, chopped, and we'll cook this over medium heat until the onions are nice and soft and they start to color a little bit, and that's going to take about 5 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to remove these chicken skins from the chicken pieces because if we left them on and put them into the stock, it would actually make it way too greasy. The onions look good. They're nicely caramelized. A lot of fond on the bottom of that pot. Now we're going to add in a little bit of thyme. This is 2 teaspoons. We just want to cook that for about 30 seconds, really to draw out the flavor and the aroma.
Okay.
This is 7 cups of chicken broth. And we're using a low-sodium chicken broth, which is great here. All right, and a couple of bay leaves. And go ahead and put the chicken right back in there. We just want to simmer this gently covered until the chicken is cooked through, and that's going to take about 20 minutes.
Okay.
All right, so while the chicken is simmering away, we can get to the slicks.
This is just about the slicks, I know.
Yeah. So we are going to use that 2 tablespoons of reserved chicken fat that we had earlier. We're also going to use a tablespoon of vegetable oil. Just needed a little bit more fat. And instead of water, we're going to use chicken broth, so it's going to taste a lot better. So I'm just going to mix these ingredients together. This is a 1/2 cup of the broth, 2 tablespoons of the reserved chicken fat, and a tablespoon of the vegetable oil. Just going to mix this together. Now, we're going to use a food processor to put our slicks together like that. So this is 2 cups of all-purpose flour and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Put the lid on and just mix this once or twice here. I'm going to take the feed tube off and go ahead and pour this liquid mixture in till the flour starts looking like coarse sand. So it's not going to take very long. Just need to keep an eye on it. Okay. So now I'm going to put some flour on my bench here and just turn this out. So I just want to knead this briefly, basically just to bring it together, really. All right, nice cohesive mass. Just cut this right in half. There we go, work with half at a time. So we're just going to roll this out into a 10-inch square. There we go, 10 by 10. So now we're going to cut this into 20 slicks. So I'm just going to cut it right in half. Now I want to cut across into 1-inch thick pieces. We're going to start layering these slicks right on a plate in between layers of parchment paper. We definitely want to be sure to put parchment in between each layer and put them out on a single layer. They'll start to stick to each other. Now, we don't want to cook these right now. They're obviously really, really tender, and they would fall apart when we simmer them. So I'm going to put these in the freezer. 10 minutes is the minimum, but you can leave them in there for up to 30 minutes.
Okay.
The chicken is now cooked through, simmering nicely. So I'm just going to turn off the heat and transfer it to a plate. And while I'm in there, I'm also going to get rid of any of those bay leaves that I can find. Hopefully I get both of them. We're going to go ahead and simmer the slicks right in this broth. Now, it's obviously not very thick. Usually chicken and slicks has a nice creamy gravy-like consistency. But what we found was that when we cooked those slicks right in the thickened gravy, it actually didn't cook all the way through. So you were left with a little bit of doughy slicks. Nobody wants doughy slicks.
Nobody wants doughy slicks.
So we're going to go ahead and bring that right back up to the simmer. We've got our cold slicks right here, nicely chilled. So now it's all up to the simmer. We can go ahead and add in the slicks. Easiest way to do it, just make use of the paper.
Yeah,
And if they start to stick a little bit, that's okay. They'll just peel right off. So once they're in there, I just want to stir them nice and gentle, prevent anything from sticking to each other. And then we're going to cook these until they're mostly cooked through. That's going to take about 12 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
So those slicks are just about ready. So now let's get back to that toasted flour. Well, we're going to use that to make a slurry, and a slurry is usually a liquid and flour mixed together to form kind of a really loose paste, and then you add it in right at the end.
Mystery solved.
Yeah, mystery solved. Let me just get a cup of this broth, and this is a ½ cup ladle, so I'll whisk it in. And we really need to whisk that to get rid of any lumps in there. Now, I'm just going to add this right back into that mixture, and it looks really thick. It's actually going to break apart quite easily since we tempered it with a little bit of the broth. We're going to continue simmering this mixture until that gravy thickens, and that's going to take about 3 minutes. Now I just finished shredding this chicken. Use 2 forks if you like into bite-sized pieces. And now I'm going to add this chicken right back to the pot. Just stir it right in there. We're going to let that heat up for about a minute. This is a ¼ cup minced parsley. Stir it ever so gently. Get that beautiful, thick, saucy gravy there. All righty. Almost has that roasted chicken flavor. It's so good with that toasty flour.
So chicken and slicks have 2 problems. The chicken, which is supermarket, not a really flavorful bird, and the slicks, which do fall apart. So we took skin on bone and sauteed, got little schmaltz, reserved it, then poached that chicken without the skin in chicken stock. And for the slicks, we used that schmaltz, and then we poached the slicks in that thin liquid, and then thickened the liquid after the slicks were cooked. And there you have it, a fabulous recipe, not a yucky recipe from Cook's Country. You can get all of our recipes, our tastings, testings. You can view selected episodes of the show by going to our website at cookscountrytv.com.
You gonna finish your slicks?
Yeah, I guess
You're
so.
gonna talk all day.
Nice job, Slick.